back. You're watching this India Today virtual brainstorm on the future of education, and we've got with us global panelists who are reflecting very deeply on this critical issue. With several months in this academic year written off, there are questions about how to make the most of the time before you return to class, what form will the classroom take once you get back, and how do you ensure that you don't lose out on precious time. We've got on this broadcast, I want to introduce to you once again Dr. Elizabeth Kish. She's the warden of the Rhodes Trust at the University of Oxford. She's joining us live from Oxford in the United Kingdom. Professor Anant Agarwal is the founder and chief executive of edX. He's a professor of computer science at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Professor Shrikant Dattar is a professor who teaches design thinking, innovation and accountancy at the Harvard Business School. One quick clarification, he's also my professor when I'm there, and he's a terrific person to be in the class with. Professor, we've got Sal Khan with us. He's the founder of the Khan Academy, with us from Mountain View, California. Last but not least, we've got Baiju Ravindran. He is the founder of the well-known edtech brand Baiju. So welcome to all our guests again. I want to reflect for a moment on what the future of education could look like. Professor Anant Agarwal, I'll start with you. You've seen and been a part of the creation of the online education space. Once life returns to normal, and at this moment nobody's quite certain what that new normal will be and when, what do you think education will look like? What do you think the new normal will look like?
The future of education, simply put, is blended. Blended is the new normal. Now, let me give you a quick little example that should bring the value of blended learning to everybody. When I was a student at IIT Madras in the late 70s, I had a fantastic professor, Professor Radhakrishna Rao. And he was brilliant, but he would teach very fast. And classes mein 5 minute ke andar, he would just go so fast that I would be lost. And I would sit there taking notes and completely lose Professor Rao for the rest of the lecture. Now imagine if I could have paused Professor Rao. Imagine if I didn't understand something, I could have rewound him 6 times. Imagine if I had a professor and he was going too slow, I could speed him up. Imagine if I did not want to listen to the professor, I could even mute the professor. Now, this kind of flexibility, this kind of self-paced learning, as Sal Khan talked about, that enables you to learn at your own speed is just incredibly powerful. And blended learning will give you that. Now, blended learning is not a new trend. Thomas Friedman, a celebrated author at the New York Times, he indicated that during major upheavals, new changes happen. And these new changes already have to be in place. And upheavals like COVID-19 will accelerate these small trends. Now, blended learning was an existing trend that was already happening very slowly across universities. But what will happen in the future is that blended learning will get accelerated because of COVID-19 as students all over the world are learning online. Professors are getting this crash immersion on online learning, and they're also liking it, many of them. I'll give you an example of a colleague of mine. He said the following: my first online lecture, this was during COVID-19, my first online lecture was the lecture with the highest student engagement in my career. And he had been teaching for 20 years. Students are able to ask questions more easily in the chat session when they can be anonymous. If you're sitting in a 300-person class, you are shy to ask questions. And blended learning gives you all of this.
Dr. Kish, what's your sense of what the new normal in education could look like from where you're at the University of Oxford, and even since you've taught across continents? What's your sense of what the new normal is going to look like?
So I agree with my fellow panelists that blended learning is going to be absolutely critical for the future of education. Although I also firmly believe that there are things that, as you know, we are embodied beings, and for students to learn to do certain things, for them to engage deeply in building community, they have to be, together. physically together. But I think we're going to be seeing more ways in which faculty and universities and programs like the Rhodes Trust leverage online tools in order to expand our reach, to sustain dialogue in ways that is not possible when you're just coming to class and then leaving class. So I think it's going to be that blended model going forward. I also think I want to pick up on something that a number of the panelists have said, that it's a little bit of a dilemma, that on the one hand we do have this digital divide, and we do know how very difficult it is to reach students if they don't have access to the internet, if they don't have for instance, they may have a smartphone, but data may be very expensive. And in many parts of the world, that is a real limiting factor. So what I also hope is that institutions, and certainly the Rhodes Trust is one of those. We're working with a program, actually collaborating with Khan Academy on this, and with Eric and Wendy Schmidt from Google, to create a program called RISE, which will work with young people starting at the age of 15 to 17. And we really see the digital platform as the access point for them, but we also recognize that we need to close that digital divide by making data inexpensive or free for children. So I think we're also going to see more efforts by governments, by philanthropists, by business leaders to bridge that digital divide, recognizing how critical access to that blended learning model will be.
Since Sal spent so much time looking at the issue of the digital divide, I want to ask him about how we can make online education equally available, not just to those who are watching you on India Today television live at this moment, Sal, but also to those who are in the poorest parts of our country and the world, who may not have access to high quality data, who may not have access to 24/7 electricity. Does this further the gap, or do you think because it's online it actually bridges the gap and some of the challenges in any case remain? What are your ideas around trying to overcome those?
Well, first of all, I agree exactly what Baiju had said earlier, that if you don't have online, the inequity would be worse. Because the affluent, the middle class would find some way to support their children. And there are a lot of underprivileged kids who do have access to at least a basic smartphone. And so online for sure is helping. But there are a category of children around the world who don't have access, who don't have proper access. One of the silver linings that I hope comes out of this crisis is that governments around the world, corporations, philanthropists around the world, they realize that at-home access is not a nice to have, it is a must have, it is a human right. It's like electricity or clean drinking water or sanitation, especially in times of social distancing. So that's, I think, the biggest factor. And we're starting to see movement in that way. There have been big movements that I've been helping around with, where philanthropists and school systems have been able to get many thousands of devices out to students. But it has to be done at a more systemic scale, probably at a state or a federal scale. I think the other changes that are going to take place is it's very clear learning is no longer going to be bound by time and space. This is something that everyone in the online community has been saying for some time, but now it's becoming a reality, because as we go back to school, we know there's a very clear possibility that we have another round of closures. And that time, it's not going to be as acceptable to have these ad hoc plans or no plans at all. And so systems, schools, they're going to have to leverage these online tools as strategic supplements during the school year. And there's huge value there, as we've talked about, to differentiate for every student. As Professor Agarwal said, you can watch and learn at your own pace, but you can also get practice, immediate feedback, things that you don't typically get in the kind of the purely physical world. And it further empowers teachers. And then if you have to go virtual, you can lean more heavily on those tools. But, I think we're going to get a world of competency-based learning, where it's not just how much time you spend in a seat, because now we know that the seat could be anywhere. It'll be, do you know the material or not? It's kind of going to be a path-independent outcome. I think there's going to be a world where the notion of transcripts change, the notion of credentials change, or at least they become a little bit more flexible to allow this not being bound by time and space.
Professor Dattar, how do you see the post-pandemic education world? Because one of the things with any Ivy League institute is the prestige of being on campus. The other is, if it's online, then it could be just by peer review. If there are students who like a program of a professor, say in Melbourne or Singapore or Japan, they don't necessarily need to come just to a particular US campus to learn. So that makes the task of faculty, I'd assume, that much tougher, because you're not just benchmark within the campus, but you're benchmarked globally, and people know, okay, if I want to study artificial intelligence, then XYZ professor at ABC University is the best, and that's the place I want to be, and he may or may not be at MIT or HBS or Harvard University.
So I think, and Sal touched upon this already, this idea about how will you credential going forward, which you're raising, is an important point. I think these are all possibilities that I think are real and will happen. I think the question about whether you would come to a place like Harvard for your management education, Rahul, then boils down to what are the synergies across different topic areas. And as I was arguing earlier, there might be lots of opportunities where there are in fact connections. I will boil it down to 5 principles that I think are going to guide us as we go, and I'll not touch upon all of those because I think several of my eminent panelists have already described that. First, really focusing a lot more on pedagogy and putting the learner at the center of the learning process. So we've always focused on how we teach a little bit more, but now how best do students learn and how do they get the joy of learning? So focusing on pedagogy as much as on content. I see that as a shift, and clearly this hybrid blended model allows us to do that. Second, as we've already talked about, the ability to, second principle, allow learners to go at their own pace and using their own styles of learning. People get stuck at different points. I think with the way we are collecting data, as several of my colleagues here on the panel are doing, we can actually target much better the kind of learning that you need to provide to unblock people's learning capabilities. And I think I see that as continuing to happen. I think the idea, the third principle I would say is that we can now offer things at different price points, even free, as Baiju and others are doing, which is incredible. But the business model will change, I think, with even possibly executive education, being done differently. But I think a very exciting opportunity here is this idea that Sal was just talking about with respect to time. We've always had to have students come at a particular time because you have to be physically there and do it. It's not clear at all that that's the best form of doing learning. So in my course, executive education course on reimagining strategy, where we are worrying about how does someone actually innovate and rethink what they're doing, so much better for us to do it over a wider period of time, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, rather than 3 days. And so we can now begin to experiment with it. Think about the entrepreneurial journey that someone goes through, like Baiju and others and Sal and others have done. What are different points in time where you need to have that learning? So how might that occur? So the fourth principle is around time. And the fifth principle on geographic dispersion that I've already talked about. How do we think about geographical dispersion as a strength and not a weakness? So you can draw on experts from different regions, understanding of different regions. But again, going back to the idea of being, and you are going to, how do you inspire people? Of course, it's an important skill to learn online, but then coming back together. So I don't think it will be completely disintermediated in the sense of having, different courses from different places. But with those 5 principles, some opportunities to think about how do we combine an online and an on-campus education in very powerful ways.
That's an interesting analysis. Baiju, how are you reflecting on this critical question of what education in the future is going to look like?
Yeah, since everybody talked about blended learning, I don't want to repeat that once more. That's going to be finding the right format of blended learning is important, but that's from an offering point of view. On the other side, what is really required is students and teachers slightly changing their roles. We need students to take initiatives. We need knowledge seekers, and teachers ideally should play the role of a mentor, just like how it happens in top elite schools where teachers are very happy to take a moderator kind of a role where classes will move forward through discussions. Now, why it's important, I'll just talk about it for a minute. Like if you look at most of the reports, like 2/3 of the students, those who are in primary school today, they're not even the jobs which they will get into, they're not even defined. So how do you prepare the next generation for the unforeseen jobs of tomorrow? You can do that only if you make them, I'll use 3-4 words: active learners, those who take initiative in learning. That's why I'm using the word knowledge seekers. And so we need to bring that curiosity back in the student, right? All of us, when we were 3, 4, 5-year-olds, we were very curious to learn new things. Now, whether you use active learners, self-learners, continuous learners, lifelong learners, it's all very, very important, because jobs are changing so fast. The job requirements also change. So the learning cannot stop, and it's ever more important than like let's say a few decades back. We want students to continue upskilling, reskilling. So I always tell that 21st century illiterates are not the ones who can't read and write. They are the ones who can't learn, unlearn, and then relearn. So how do you create an environment which will help students in terms of learning how to learn? So that's the key. So we have to kind of switch roles, especially those who are the biggest beneficiary of any learning has to be students. Now, the format or the offering can be blended, but we also need, and I'm sure you're going to see that over the next. For me, the future of learning is where students will become more and more active from the passive learners whom they are in most of our classrooms today. And learning that blend this asynchronous online elements where students can go at their own pace, on their own time, have some choice in terms of what they want to learn, when they want to learn, and are said to engage deeply and critically with the course content, where even teachers have an option of improving the session after every session, because they get real-time feedback, and those who want to improve, they see where the students are dropping off. Now, in a classroom, it's impossible for a student to give a critical feedback to the teacher. But here, if you keep it anonymous, after every session when we do it online, we know what's the response which we get from students, which will help teachers to improve. The universities and institutions can improve the course or the curriculum, improve or upgrade the course or curriculum, even during the season itself. And most importantly, students will be the biggest beneficiary, because the personalization possible in terms of how we offer the content based on size of learning, pace of learning, style of learning. And contrary to what people think, when you do it through a personal screen like this itself is an example, right? What 5-6 of us are doing here, something like this could have never happened in the offline world, getting all of us together at such a short notice, just 2 days before Rahul contacted me. So a lot of these physical human interactions, how it's going to get played out after this crisis is actually going to change, and most of them for positively. And that's the reason why I think the future of learning is based on students becoming more and more active. Thereby, we need to create knowledge seekers and lifelong learners.
Okay. So in the few minutes that we have left, I just want to focus on what are the skills that our panelists believe will be most useful in the after Corona era. So I'll start with Anant Agarwal at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. You're seeing the changes that are upon us. Of the changes that stay in the after Corona world, what do you think? If relearning and new learning is critical, what skills, which areas do you think people who are watching you at this time should be focusing their time most on?
I'd like to talk about 3 quick things. One is, for students, you need to know how to learn online. For teachers, it's really important to learn how to teach online, how to teach in a blended way. And blended learning is new. We've used the word 30 times on this show. And if you're a teacher or a professor out there or a lecturer out there and you're getting confused, don't worry. We have a course on that. All of this can be taught online. If you go to edx.org and you search for blended, you can see a course on how to teach with blended learning. And the third thing is for people that want to get jobs or people who already are in jobs. When I grew up in India, it was all about engineering, mathematics, biology, and professional learning, technical learning. It's all about technical. And as parents, you know that. I think what's going to happen in the future is soft skills are going to be as important as the tech skills, the STEM skills. Soft skills such as critical thinking, active listening, negotiation, teamwork, reading, writing, communications. These are all supremely important. And it turns out you can learn those as well. And so you should be learning soft skills as well as learning tech skills. And I think what's going to happen to credentials, we will have new credentials that will help you learn these new skills in a short format. You don't have to get a full master's degree or a bachelor's degree in soft skills. Credentials are also getting smaller. We have new modern credentials called professional certificates, micro bachelors, micro masters, where you can pick up these multidisciplinary skills in small chunks. And you can learn soft skills in the same way. So I really encourage everybody to go and think about acquiring these soft skills in addition to the STEM skills. Jobs, you will get jobs
Very
because of
interesting.
that
Dr.
much
Elizabeth
more
Kish,
likely than
what
if you don't do
according
that.
to you are the skills that will be most critical, and how can people, whether they're Rhodes Scholars or not, prime themselves to success in the after Corona era?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I completely agree about the importance of soft skills, that people do need to be critical thinkers and problem solvers. I mean, look at what's happening with COVID-19. We need scientists who are able to collaborate across borders. We need, government officials who are not just hunkering down, but actually learning from what's working and not working in other places. It's actually one of the things we're really trying to promote amongst the Rhodes community is to be a catalyst for Rhodes Scholars around the world to work together. So we're going to need people who can cross disciplinary boundaries, because the problems we face, like pandemics and climate change, they're going to need people who can build teams that work across disciplinary boundaries, national boundaries, and cultural boundaries. Without that, we're not going to be able to solve the problems of the 21st century. And how you create that in an educational system, as my panelists have been saying, is through inspiring students to be curious, to be problem solvers, not to simply be regurgitating knowledge on an exam, but actually creating things, tackling complex, wicked problems, and trying to come up with ways to address them. And it's that sort of skill building that builds, citizens for the 21st century, and citizens who will actually be able to solve the problems that we face together as humanity.
Sal, very quickly and in the end, what's your sense of skills that you think are most critical to succeed in the after Corona era, and what's the best way to build those?
Yeah, just following what everyone has said, there's a term in Eastern philosophy known as the beginner's mind, which is a high compliment, which is a beginner never just assumes things. A beginner might know some content, but is always trying to be curious, always trying to learn more. And as everyone talked about, that is the by far the most important skill of all. Yes, it's nice to have the hard skills. It's going to be just as important in the future as it is now or in the past to be able to communicate well, to be able to write well. But the most important skill of all is that learning how to learn, so that no matter how the world changes or evolves, and obviously we're all dealing with pretty dramatic change in just a matter of weeks, and those are going to do well are the ones who can have that mindset. And I would say the credential of the future, the transcript of the future, is going to be, can you document your capabilities? Can you show the world your portfolio of what you've done? That's going to matter more than any one credential.
Wow, there's just been so much to learn and so much to absorb in this 1 hour virtual brainstorm. I want to thank all our guests very deeply for agreeing to participate in this global brainstorm. You've given people who are watching a lot to reflect on, and maybe if they pick on that, maybe improve the chances of success in the after Corona era. Dr. Elizabeth Kish from the Rhodes Trust at the University of Oxford, Professor Shrikant Dattar at the Harvard Business School, Professor Anant Agarwal at edX and MIT, Sal Khan from Mountain View, California, and Ravindran Baiju from New York for joining us on this special Future of Education brainstorm. Thank you very, very much. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We'll have more for you on the other side of a very quick break. Stay with us.